All right, isn't it good to be out here today? Beautiful. Aren't you glad it's not last week? We would not be out here. All right. So today I want to just walk you through a preview of where we're going over this next year. I always get excited about this time of year because we get to showcase how we hope to serve you and also how we hope to serve the community beyond us. And so this kind of gives you an overview, and I got a lot to run through. But to get there, I want to remind you of something that happened 155 years ago. 155 years ago, there was a small group of people that lived in this area, and there were a couple churches, just a couple churches, that were in town. And they weren't quite resonating with how they wanted to connect with God. And so they gathered together and they said to each other, you know, it'd be great if we could have a church that kind of spoke the same language we do, that gave us the freedom to study the Bible together and come to our own conclusions, and to create a church together that didn't have like a higher up telling us you had to do it this way. And these people were Baptists. And what I just told you were like two of the main things that distinguish Baptists from any other group. The freedom to figure out the Bible on our own, and the freedom to do church the way we think. And so this group of people founded the very first Baptist church in Napa, California. That's this church, which is awesome. 1860 that happened. We've been around, and it's awesome that we have been. You know, when they chose to do this, it took some risk on their part, but they were committed to what it meant to be their expression of the people of God, and they went for it. And I think they probably never could have imagined that we would be sitting here today, this many of you, in this space, which at that time, well, I don't even think it was a prune orchard yet in 1860. I'm not sure what it was. Probably just a field, maybe a hay field or something, because that was the main thing in Napa until prunes came, and then people were tired of being so regular, so they went for grapes, and it went from there. So we're not even sure what this was like, but there's no way they could have imagined this kind of resource being able to use for helping people out and serving people. And it reminded me, as I was thinking about that, of this verse. This comes from Paul's favorite letter to his favorite church. And Paul said this to the church in the Philippians. It says, I am sure of this, that he who began a good work in you will bring it to completion at the day of Jesus Christ. So he was confident that this church that he helped start in this little community of Philippi, that God wasn't finished with it, and that God was happy with what God saw happening in that community and was behind its future. And I believe the same is true of Crosswalk. I think God is with us in so many ways, and miraculously so, because we don't always get it right, and I do, but you don't, and I don't always get it right, and yet God is with us, even though, helping us along the way. And what I want to say is, you know, our purpose hasn't really changed that much since the very beginning. The very beginning, 155 years ago, it was, we want to be able to express a different voice of the faith in this community. And that's exactly what we continue to do. And we're known for it. And we need to go full throttle on that, because we can reach a pocket of this community that no other church can. And the people that other churches can reach in this community, we can't. But we have to do our part to reach the people that we can reach. And that's what I hope to do this year. So I'm going to orient you to what teaching things are coming up on Sunday mornings. I'm going to give you a clue what's happening with our kids and our youth and what's going on with them. We're going to talk about some of the helps courses we're going to offer this year. And there's a lot, and it's going to be a robust year. So let's just check this stuff out. First thing, you've already heard about this, but Love Does is coming up. We kick that off next week. You're going to love this guy. I'm going to give you some Bible stuff heading into you being able to hear from Bob Goff, the author of this book called Love Does. This guy's a rock star Christian. He's making a difference all over the world in his Christian commitment. But he challenges us to think of love as not something we just feel, but it's something that we do. And this guy is funny. I mean, he's a lawyer, and literally he's like helping kids in Uganda in incredible ways. Very inspiring stuff. But you cannot help but just feel better listening to this guy. So if you could suffer through me, deal with that, because that's good, because you're going to hear this guy and you're going to love him. So anyway, we'll be doing that for 5 weeks. We're going to have the book, Love Does, available for purchase starting next week, and we just give it to you at our cost, which would be $10. So if you want that, the book gives you way more than the series will, and you're going to love it. I'm confident of it. Then after that, we're going to do a series on basic Christian practices and kind of a new way to think about that. So if Love Does is all about how do you do love in life with other people and serving, this one is going to introduce you to some ancient ways of walking with God. Ways you might not have thought of before. You know, sometimes we think about, okay, well, going to church, maybe doing my daily devotions. But there were other things that the earliest people in our faith tradition did, which made all the difference. So we're going to introduce you to those leading up to Thanksgiving. It'll be great. We'll do something fun for Thanksgiving, and then when we head into Christmas time, we're going to talk about giving Christmas and what that means. And we're going to focus more on some of the things that aren't really about our culture. Our culture is very materialistic, and how can we buy more stuff for more people? And I want to turn it around a little bit and talk about what does it mean to give joy? What does it mean to give peace? What does it mean to give love at Christmas? Because I have a hunch that if we master that a little bit, we're going to experience more of what Christmas is all about. And I think we're going to spread a little bit more of what Christmas is supposed to be. So that's coming. Then in the new year, we're going to, where are we here? Oh yeah, making sense of the Bible. I'm trying to do a mixture of stuff that helps you figure out how to walk with Jesus, and then some heady stuff. So in January, we're going to put our thinking caps on and going to take you through some of the principles of this book, which we've been selling around here for a couple years because this guy, Adam Hamilton, who wrote the book by the same name, I agree with this hermeneutic. Everybody say hermeneutic. Hermeneutic is a fancy word for figuring out how to understand the Bible and apply it to today. And I agree with his methodology. And so I'm going to give you some of those principles so that when you're having conversation with people and they're saying, what about this in the Bible? You know how to navigate that and know how to figure that out. It's part of my job, by the way. And the scriptures tell me that my job is to equip you in the faith. And so part of what I want to do to equip you is to figure out how to take the Bible, how to take a passage, and figure out how do you apply that forward to today. So we're going to spend a few weeks on that. Then right after that, right around Valentine's Day, we're going to do a series called The Meaning of Jesus and introduce you to some concepts of who he was from two different voices, a more progressive voice and a more conservative voice. When we take a look at the full picture, we get a fuller picture of Jesus. My goal with this one is to help stretch your thinking about the person of Jesus as we march up to Easter, so that by the time we hit Easter, that is a more meaningful experience for you. That you're coming into this, you're coming into Holy Week, and you're thinking, wow, I know a lot more about this guy named Jesus than I had before, and that makes Easter week just all the more powerful. By the way, we're going to be doing baptisms throughout the year, but when we come to Easter, we want to do something a little different, something for you to be thinking about right now. So the ancients, when they would take people through a process of deciding whether or not they were going to be Jesus followers, it would happen all during what we call Lent. Sometimes it would even happen for a full year. And their final coronation of their welcoming into the faith was celebrated with baptism. And they would do it the night before Easter morning. So we're going to try that here. I haven't figured out exactly how late we can go. I don't think we can go with midnight because I'll be too tired the next day. But we're going to do an evening or late night baptism service. And it's going to be awesome. So if you've been thinking about, hey, this baptism thing sounds cool, and I'd like to try it, look forward to that date because that's going to be pretty sweet. And then Easter Sunday, we'll celebrate it with some video clips of what happened and introduce you to people with their hair nice, the next day, so you can see what they look like. So that's coming with that. And then after we're done with Easter, I'm going to give you a series called Stepping Stones. In terms of theology, I'm going to take you through some systematic ways of thinking about key components of theology. So that as you're thinking through your faith and how you put it all together, this will help you do that. So if you think about fall is going to be extremely practical in helping you put some flesh and blood on your faith. When we go to the new year, we're going to spend some time getting you deep and getting you grounded so you're confident in your foundation. Then once we go through that, we're going to move into a season of peace. And what do I name this thing? Rest. So we're going to spend some time in the summer talking about this key principle that Jesus certainly practiced. And I don't know about you, but I'm a regular person. I've got 2 kids that are real busy. And we're real busy, and it's sometimes very hard in our culture to take rest. Have you seen that new commercial on TV? It's about a guy who looks like he's working some, I don't know, high-rise job, and he leaves at 5 o'clock. He has the audacity to leave at 5 o'clock. He's the only one, and sort of the conversation going on behind is, whoever said that leaving at 5 o'clock was a bad idea, kind of a thing, and everybody's looking at him like he's nuts. Well, we are a little nuts. We drive, and we wonder why we don't feel this peace. So we're going to take a look at ways to practice rest. So you'll be able to breathe a little easy throughout the summer. Okay, so those are the series that are coming. In between series, what I'm shooting for, last year we experimented with this idea of Whopper Sunday, where we just kind of do a little breather and do kind of a one-hit wonder kind of a teaching thing. We're going to be doing that this year too, to give just a little break and give you something totally different before we launch into new series. We'll give you more press on those as we get those available. I already know the one that's coming in October, but I don't have the date just yet. But it'll be a brain bender for you. We have a local author here in Napa who also was a scholar at one of the universities over in Marin County, and he sort of his masterpiece work was on a pretty touchy theological issue. And so we're going to bring him in. He's a retired guy now. And we're going to bring him in and just interview him and say, okay, why did you want to write this book? And what are we supposed to do with the information you've been giving us? So it's going to be fun. All right. So anyway, let's move on. Let me introduce you to what we're doing with the kids, because our goal with the kids is the same as our goal with you. We want you to help have a robust faith experience that makes a difference in your life and makes a difference in the world. We have a fantastic year lined up with our Kids Crossing program. We just went through one of the lessons just this past week. Lisa, would you agree? Pretty cool stuff? Yeah. So Lisa's going to be one of our volunteers back there. Everybody heard of Vacation Bible School, right? One of the cool things about Vacation Bible School is they are incredibly hands-on. Kids are just getting into the story. They're having a blast. Well, this is basically that all year long. And so we're going to spend some time for 6 weeks starting next week. Our kids are going to go through in-depth stuff on just the story of creation, or actually stories of creation, because there are two in Genesis. And we're going to take a look at that. In the first week, they're going to be doing some science-type experiments and see what that's like. Then the next week, they might be doing something with food. And then the next week, they're going to be wrapping their brains around the whole idea with different games. And the next week, it's going to be some art project. So it just goes on and on and on like that. Incredibly creative. And if you go onto our website, all this stuff that I'm showing you is previewed on the website. It's up and ready for you to look at. You can take a look at a link to what this curriculum is all about. It's just way, way cool. And we've got some key volunteers that are willing to lead this thing out and make it awesome. If you want to be a part of the game, by the way, it's going to be way cool. You'll probably have way more fun doing that than listening to me. And if you're interested, just put it on your info card, and we'll get you hooked up, because it will be awesome. Also, we recognize graphics are terrible on this because had some formatting issues, but a new thing is starting in September for middle schoolers. My wife and I especially, and I think most of you who understand middle school would agree, the middle school is about the toughest season of life for kids. They are right in between, major changes of growing out of everything that elementary school is, not quite ready for high school. Their bodies are going nuts on them, and just all kinds of things. Are we a kid? Are we an adult? Where are we? And it's a tough one to navigate. Without question, my kids, and seeing middle school for our kids, not that they struggled with it, but middle school environment was just a lot tougher than high school. High school is a breeze compared to middle school. So my wife has a real heart for this. And so she had this idea that we would have a breakout just for middle schoolers on Sunday mornings at 10. And she was willing to do a couple of them, so we knew we had that. And then I reached out to somebody who I thought would have a similar interest, and she agreed to do a couple of them. So starting in September, if you're a middle school student, so we got a special breakout for you right in our very hip and happening youth area. And you're going to have a great time. Go online and take a look at some of the Bible curriculum that they're going to go through. It's just super cool, super creative. But the heart of it really, I know for my wife, and I'm sure for Debbie Simpkins, who's the other player in the middle school side, is that they really just want to be there and support these kids through this time, so that those kids know they have somebody in their corner who loves them and is with them and is going to help them walk through it. So that's coming, and I'm real excited about that. We've been talking a little bit about what's coming up for high school, the Rosie the Riveter thing. This is a real thing. Did anybody know about this? This is like a national monument in Richmond, and I heard about this on the radio. Sounds totally cool. You know, the Christian church has not always got it right in terms of women in ministry and women in leadership and women being equal to men. In fact, most of the church, I think, is still antiquated on that note, which it shouldn't have been, because that very first verse I started with you about, he who began a good work in you will bring it to completion, that church in Philippi was probably led by a woman. So Paul didn't really seem to have a problem with it. There are some verses that get hijacked to a different conclusion. But we're going to go down there and talk about how do we figure this thing out, and how do we get our brains around this thing. So we're going to go right after church, go down, visit Rosie the Riveter Museum, talk about it a little bit, and come back home. It's going to be a blast. We've got a bunch of really cool things. In October, I want to take them to a cemetery, among other things, and uncreepy death and dying. We as a culture do not know what to do with death and dying, and we avoid it and we pretend it doesn't exist. There's a growing trend in the funeral industry. I was talking to my friend Tom Smith, who works at Tulake as the funeral director, and he said, Pete, you wouldn't believe how many people do absolutely nothing when their loved one dies. Absolutely nothing. I mean, just to pretend like it never even happened. And, you know, back in the day when I was a kid, if somebody passed away, there would be a visitation at the funeral home for 2-3 days, where family could be and friends could come and just be with them. And I think there's a real quality to that. And of course, in the Jewish tradition, it was called sitting Shiva, where in the home, the deceased would be in the home, and people could just come and be with them and say, you're not alone, and this is real, and we're going to get through this. Our culture doesn't know what to do with it, and that means our youth don't know what to do with it. So I want to help them figure out what to do with it. So we're going to interview some interesting people and start to think through this stuff, so it's not as creepy as it sounds. And then I'm going to put them to work. So we're going to have our annual Thanksgiving dinner, and we decided to do our Thanksgiving dinner in November again this year. And as we have done in the past, it's going to be a fundraiser for our work in Faraha. For those kids, and if needed, then we'll also help support our own local food ministry, by the way, because that's really key to us. By the way, I just want to take a moment here and celebrate our food pantry. Our food pantry went through a transition this year. We wanted to shift out of this space for our distribution, because you can kind of see in this room, that's getting made over to be a new space for expanding the preschool, which I'm very excited about, because it also incorporates a new program that Napa actually is behind and excited about, which is awesome, to reach out to English learners, which is just awesome. So anyway, to do that and to keep people out of the kids' hair, we shifted our distribution to the gym. And just hats off to our food pantry people. You all know Carrie Nuccio? Yeah. You all know Carrie Nuccio. She is a bundle of energy. Well, she went shopping with Darlene and Helen on their normal run, and she came back the next day and she said, I was exhausted. These two women ran circles around me, even though they're 20 years older than me. Just incredible people that we have. And hearing stories about our food pantry distribution this past week, the food is the thing that we focus on, or we think that's what it's really about, but it's really not. What we're really doing is we're helping people that really need it. That food pantry, it is the stopgap for folks. Folks that have more month than money. And without the food pantry and the services that are provided by our team, life would just be a whole lot rougher. And the cool thing is because our food pantry folk have the right attitude and the right heart, they're there to serve these people and love them and listen to them. And it just makes all the difference. The feedback we get on that team is just fantastic. And so, one more round of applause for food pantry. Well done, guys. So anyway, you're very familiar with Faraha, and Thanksgiving dinner is going to do that. And then in December, we're going to have a big Christmas party. We're going to do our annual Christmas caroling thing. So if you want to get your voices tuned up for that, we'll go to shut-ins here in Napa and then go have a party after that. And then my hope is, the details are still forthcoming, but Tijuana 16, that's what TJ 16 means. And I want to take our high school youth in particular and some middle schoolers, if the parents are cool with it, down to Tijuana for a mission trip. And we're going to do this the last week of Napa's of Christmas break, because you don't know what to do with your kids anyway, so I'll take them off your hands. And we'll go down there for a few days. If you're not in the Napa school district, it means you're going to need to think about now pulling your kid out of class and doing an independent study thing. So work on that. And it's going to be a great trip. So just start looking forward to that. And if you're a parent, start thinking about passport stuff. If you haven't figured that stuff out already, it takes a few weeks to make that happen. This kind of a trip is a life changer. You know, we have poverty in the United States, but we don't have extreme poverty on the scale that other countries do, including Mexico. So Mexico has a lot of money, but they also have a lot of extreme poverty, and it's right across the border. And where Deborah's house sits, that's the project we support there, that's a safe house for women and children who are in a domestic violence situation. They're safe, it's a very safe place that we'll be and do our work. But just looking across the valley, you see the shanties. It's all around, you can't miss it. And that alone will be an eye-opener for your kids. And I can talk about it all day long, I can show you pictures. They're not going to get it until they're on the ground. When their boots are on the ground and they're experiencing this and smelling it and looking into the eyes of people who are living this, that's the game changer. So that's coming up in January. We hope to do that with them. And a little heads up, we hope to take a crew to Faraja again in June. So if you're interested in getting in on that trip and experiencing that, see me soon. I'll be having a meeting about that and what that requires, because that one also is just a mind blower. And that's going to be in Nairobi, Kenya. So look forward to that. Okay, moving forward, I'm going to challenge our youth with the fast for Faraha, and we'll do something cool with that. Some of you have done the challenge with me before, where we eat like our Faraha kids do for at least one meal. And maybe if they really have their game on, they'll eat exactly what the Faraha kids do from Ash Wednesday until Easter morning. That, again, is a real wake-up call. And if you remember, the first time I went to Kenya to prepare myself for it, I decided to take on this challenge, what I guessed was going to be. And anybody remember those days? Yeah. People thought I was dying. Kind of was. So what I ate each day was one can of beans. And that's it for the whole day. I lost about 30 pounds because that'll do it to you. But, you know, over an extended period of time, especially the last 2 weeks of doing that, you start to appreciate how devastating malnutrition is. Because it starts to mess with your energy level in big ways. Once my body fat was drained and I didn't have much more to work with, your thinking clarity isn't quite there, and you start to understand why it's such a big problem. And you live it a little bit. So anyway, we'll do it in a healthy, smart way. We'll get Bob Lewis to help us figure out good nutritional value and stuff, make sure no kids suffer. But anyway, that's coming up in February. That will be cool. And then we have the Jesus option. I want to take the kids through a theological journey. And we're actually going to introduce the kids to some other leaders of other world religions so that it takes the fear factor out of what other world religions teach. And talk about how Jesus is like and not like these other key players. I think that's really, really important in our world. There's a lot of ignorance about what other world religions are really about, and it doesn't help when you have like an ISIS/ISIL situation that pretends to paint the whole of Islam with that brush when it's really an extremist expression of that. So I want the kids to understand what's going on. We'll probably take a field trip. There's a Sikh temple over in Fairfield. And that would be just a whole different kind of experience. Sikhism is its own world religion that people might not even know exists. And some people think that when they see a Sikh walking around, they're looking at a Muslim, and they're not. They're looking at a Sikh. So anyway, that's coming up for them because I think it's important for them to have that kind of global perspective. And then the next month, after we do that serious stuff, we're going to go just have some fun at the Oakland Zoo and talk about creation and what God was doing with all that. and get our eyes on some beasts in Oakland. And who wouldn't want to go to the zoo, right? I mean, it's a good time. And then after that, we're going to take some time in May to walk through the vineyards. You know, it blows my mind. Lynn and I laugh about this regularly. We grew up, both of us, in the Midwest. And so when we moved to California, we were very excited about all that California had to offer. And we've taken our kids all over California to see all the sights. What blows our mind is how many people have grown up in California who haven't seen California. And you tell them about Tahoe, and they're like, yeah, I should probably get up there someday. And you tell them about Yosemite, like, oh yeah, that'd be cool. How about Big Sur? Nope, haven't been to Big Sur. So anyway, I would not be surprised if we have some of our youth here in this church who've never walked through a vineyard and really understood what's going on. Well, Jesus had something to say about vineyards. And he used that as a metaphor for our spiritual life. So I want to take them right into the vineyards and help them understand what's going on in their own backyard and why Jesus might use that as a reference point. And then in June, I'm going to take the kids to an island adventure on Angel Island. And this is going to be a helpful place for us to go. One of the hot topics in our culture right now has to do with immigration. And Angel Island was the Ellis Island of the West. And so we're going to go take a tram tour of the island and check it out and talk about what they experience when they go to China Camp and look at some of the things that were written over there and understand that experience. I think it's going to be a rich thing. Why am I doing all this stuff? Why are we doing all these field trips? Because I think that's when youth are going to learn the most. And also, while they're doing these cool things, I'm going to have other adult volunteers with me. You know what has staying power statistically with youth? Because here's a concern. If you're a parent of a youth and you're thinking, I sure hope the faith sticks for them. And sometimes we think that the big bells and whistles kind of a program is what really works because it has very cool factor. And nothing, not saying anything against that, but statistically that doesn't have the staying power. You know what has the staying power? Relationships with other adults in a church. So I want these kids to get to know you. And I want to get to know the kids myself. I think it would be pretty awesome, because I didn't really have this growing up. I think it'd be pretty sweet if a youth in our church goes through some stuff in life, which they will as a youth, and they know that they can approach me and talk to me about it. And then later on, maybe they go to college, maybe they're working, whatever, and they run into something, they run into a wall. They have a relationship with me, and they have a relationship with other adults in the church. That's what sticks. And so that's what we want to develop here. And my personal experience, the things that impacted me the most when I was a youth were when our youth leaders treated me like an adult with adult situations. So they started talking to me about, well, what do we really think about euthanasia? How do we think about abortion? How do we think about these hot political issues and hot life issues? And that's why I want to do the field trips, because they naturally give us a way to get into those experiences and talk about them. They sound cool to you? I think they're going to be really cool. Yeah, it'll be a lot of fun. But we also want to help some, Camp Crosswalk, that was a great success. We had a blast. Got to serve some people in Vallejo, which was also cool. So we're going to redo that. If you weren't aware of what that was, in July we had a camp out here. Had some adults help me. Mike was real helpful. Trudy and others helped me drive. Bruno was here, and a bunch of people helped. And so we had a great time here. And then in the middle of the night, our sister church in Vallejo, they feed the poor every Friday night at 3 a.m. Hot soup and chicken. And there were only 50 or so when we went. This past Friday, they had over 90 there, 3 a.m. And they're there at 3 a.m. because the bars close at 2 a.m. And they know that the people that are going to be on the streets and are hungry are going to need it. And so it's just amazing. And my friend Al Marks, who's a pastor down there at First Baptist, is just doing an amazing work down there. So we'll do that again because it was so good. But then we also have some stuff that we want to do to help out you as adults. And one of the things that's coming up, I wanted to try this on for Thsi. We're going to have a series of health kinds of things on Sunday evening. We've tried different evenings of the week with limited success. We've never really tried a Sunday evening thing for very long. So Sunday evenings at 6 o'clock, starting in September, on September 13. This is primarily for married couples or anybody in a relationship, and it deals with communication skills. However, I know that there are a number of you that may not be in a relationship right now, and you might be someday, and you hear this communication skills thing, and you're like, man, I could really go for that. I would benefit from that. So you're welcome to come and learn the skills. Just know going into it that, you know, there's the awkward factor that they're going to be using the reference point of couples, but the principles are still there, and they're awesome. This stuff, this couple, the woman in this thing, she teaches at one of the UCs, I think UC Irvine, in communication and something to do with therapy or something like that. He's a counselor himself. The stuff that they do is just real core basic marriage enrichment principle stuff that goes back to the late 1960s, early 1970s. Not real churchy, so if your friends want to come on this, you know some couples who would benefit from this. And by the way, if you're a couple, you benefit from this. You know, if you have a car and you never change the oil, what's going to happen to that engine in a year or so? You're going to be replacing your engine. And not one of us questions, oh, I need to change the oil, because we know that's what you got to do. This is changing the oil. This is giving a freshen up on your relationship. And we all get rusty. I've been married 23 years, and we all get rusty on stuff, and we all go back to old patterns that aren't healthy. This is the reset button. It's very good. I don't care if you've been married a year, 20 years, or 50 years. It's very, very good. So I hope you can make it to that. And then on the other end of the spectrum, sometimes relationships don't go the way we hope, and that happens with divorce, obviously, and also in significant relationships that break up that feel a lot like divorce and smell a lot like divorce. And so we want to help with that. And Dara already mentioned this, but Lauren and Lisa Haas, man, you couldn't ask for a better team to lead this. They're just amazing. They have huge hearts. They're well-read on the subject. And the new stuff they found, they searched high and low for what they think is really good stuff. So they're doing that. So let's give a round of applause to Lauren and Lisa. Lauren's still growing. Lisa is hiding under a table in case she has to speak in public or something. I don't know, she's here somewhere. All right. And then later on, this comes up in October. And by the way, all these things we're going to try to broadly promote in the community as well. But we have our own, Joni Yacko and Bill Krim, who are well-known and well-respected counselors in Napa. They're going to lead a 3-week class on parenting. So wave your hand, Bill and Joni, so we all can see you. Excellent. So give them a round of applause. It's going to be great. And this is a new format. We're just going to try 3 weeks, not much of a commitment, but we think it's going to offer a lot of help. And then we'll probably bring them back in the new year for another 3-weeker if it goes well. So more press will come on that once we know what that's looking like. In January, we're going to have a Money Smarts course, and this again is a Sunday night thing. And we don't know exactly what this is going to look like because I want to talk to some folks who've led this type of course in the past. I think there are some best practices that we can steal from a range of sources and create something that's better. Here's my beef. A lot of the financial management courses that are out there basically go like this. They all have some similar things. Tips on how to get out of debt, that's great. Tips on how to save money, that's great. Tips on how to budget, that's great. But often the overtone of the whole thing is, we want you to do all these things so that you can have an excessive amount just for yourself. And, you know, live your life a lot bigger. And, you know, the pursuit of financial stability, that's awesome. But we as Jesus followers have another agenda. And that is to do the most we can with what we have, with all of our resources, which is everything we are. And so I want to see if we can find something that has that broader scale, because at the end of the day, and at the end of life, all of our stuff just fades. But the difference we can make in other people's lives, locally and globally, well, that's the kind of stuff that changes the world. And so we're looking for a program that's going to help us do that. So that's coming in January. In February, we figure some of the communication stuff is led into some good conflict. So we're going to take you back into this couple and teach you how to deal with conflict and anger in a relationship. And the same couples, just part 2 of their series. It's really good stuff, so I hope you'll come on it. How it works is it's video driven, so we come in, the videos are really good. It's a couple that is leading a group of people through this stuff. And so you hear them teach, and you're sort of in the class with them. They give breaks and stuff to practice some of the stuff. It's just really, really excellent. So I hope you take advantage of that. And a workbook is part of the deal, so So come do that. And then, oh yeah, so that's sort of the overview of the primary stuff we're doing. There's some meal stuff that we're going to do along the way. But here's a question I have for you. So Crosswalk is offering all of this. And my question is what are you offering yourself and God and the world? So we're trying to do our best as a church to equip you well and to help you become the person God has created you to be, to really live in that. Jesus said, I came to bring life abundant, a different quality of life that this world really can't touch, just a different operating system. And so that's what we're trying to help develop with you this year. My question is, what are you offering yourself and God to the same end? How are you going to get engaged for your faith this year? 80% of the people or so in the United States, if they make it to church on Sunday, that's about it. And I'm just going to tell you, if that's all you've got to offer, if that's all you can offer, great, fantastic. But, if you're not taking advantage of other stuff and going deeper, then I'm going to just push you on that and say, come on, it's time to bring it. This is your life we're talking about here. And it's the world we're talking about. So get your game on and do something. Now, with that in mind, I got two things I want to talk about. I want to ask you about your nutrition, your spiritual nutrition, and then we're going to ask about regularity with that too. But let's first talk about your spiritual nutrition. Part of your rhythm. We live in a time and culture, and you may have noticed that the world has changed a little bit over the years. And one of the things that has drastically changed is how often people are in the rhythm of making church a part of their life. And whereas years ago, if you were to do a poll in the United States, how often do you go to church? A regular attender who would self-identify as a regular attender, they would say, I go about 3 times a week. Now, a self-identified, so if the survey goes out and they say, are you never go to church, I occasionally go to church, I'm a regular attender, I'm there all the time. The people who check the box regular attender now in our culture say they go to church 1.5 times a month. Well, how are you going to develop your faith on 1.5 times a month? You're not. Your spiritual nutrition is going to leave you with a faith that's going to underserve you. You can't experience what God has for you on that kind of investment. And so I'm strongly encouraging you, if you don't have your diet figured out in terms of how you're going to develop your walk with God, plug in. Get involved in this stuff. And you got 2 easy ones all the time. And come to church, that's great. And then if you want to go deeper with whatever we talk about on Sunday, either go Wednesday morning with me, or I'm going to start doing a Thursday night thing at 7 o'clock where we do the same kind of thing, where we just go deeper with this stuff. And do that, because when you start to invest like that, it's going to start to get traction in ways you never imagined you could. So I just want to greatly encourage you that way, that maybe you need to take a look at your spiritual nutrition diet and ask yourself the question, what am I doing to make sure I'm healthy? But then on the other end of the spectrum, I think some of us suffer from spiritual constipation. In fact, take a moment right now, look across the table and say, do you suffer from spiritual constipation? It's a safe place, you can admit it. You know what happens if all you do is eat and you never evacuate? You're in serious trouble, right? That is going to catch up with you, and your body is going to go septic, and there's going to be real trouble, and you're going to be in the ER, and you're going to be real sick and really uncomfortable, and everybody's going to look at your face and say, that is one grumpy person. And you're going to have a real good reason for that. In terms of our spiritual diet and stuff, the same thing happens. Here's my challenge for you. I've known people in my life that ate spiritual stuff up. They were well versed in their Bible. They could quote scripture left and right. They were at every Bible study, always in church. And yet when you looked at their face, the grumpy expression on their face gave an indication that perhaps they were spiritually constipated. And what I mean by that is it was all intake and no give back. My challenge for you is to ask the question, how are you going to give back? Because you cannot be spiritually healthy and not give back. Jesus said, follow me. That means we're following. And Jesus did not sit still. This guy was on the move. And I believe that God is asking us to stay in those same footsteps. And it's going to take us to places that we hadn't anticipated. Some of the ways that you can give back are right here on campus, and they're real easy because they happen on Sunday morning. You can give back by serving in Kids Crossing. You can give back by serving in the nursery. You can give back by helping us out, on Sunday morning with our usher stuff or with our tech stuff. There's all kinds of ways to give back. But what I'm telling you to do is give back. Because if you don't, you're going to get backed up. And it's not going to work for you. And eventually, it's going to make you septic. And also, there's no way you can learn to love like Jesus unless you're out there loving like Jesus. There's no way. You can't learn how to love just from a book. It requires practice. So I'm asking you to do that. Back in 1860, a small group of people wanted to be a voice in Napa, a different way to approach faith. We are a different way to approach faith. There are great churches in Napa, and we're one of them. We have a responsibility and a stewardship to do everything we can with our perspective, with the voice that we have, to reach the people who will suffer if we don't, because they will. It's not about getting in people's faces. It's not about coercing them into believing our way. It's just this, that the way of Jesus really does lead to life. And if we help people get the good news, because it really is good news, and really help people walk in that way, it will make a difference in their life. It'll make a difference in their relationships. It'll make a difference in their work ethic. It'll make a difference in their health. It'll make a difference in their impact in the world. They'll be healthier, happier people if we do. And if we don't, they won't know it, and they'll suffer for it. So we have an opportunity, and we have a commission given by Jesus himself to go do this thing. So let's bring it. God is bringing it all the time. He's always with us. I'm asking you to bring it, us together, to do this thing called Crosswalk Community Church and see how many people we can help experience the new life that is possible if they find themselves following in the way of Jesus. Are you with me on that? Yeah. All right. Cool. Let's pray together, and then we've got one final song, and then we can eat some of that chicken. So God, we are grateful that we are able to be in a church that you're actively involved in. And we recognize that. We're not just doing this thing, hoping something's going on, but you are changing lives through this ministry called Crosswalk. And we are privileged and grateful to be a part of it. You have called us to a unique way of approaching you, of understanding you, and that unique way helps us reach a unique audience. I'm praying that your Spirit now will start to work in us, that the people that we know who are sort of like us, who probably would resonate with what Crosswalk is about and what you're doing here, I pray that you would give us a heart and a sensitivity to those people we already know. Those people who have not found you to be good news yet. And I pray that you'll soften our hearts, that we would have compassion and love toward them. And I pray that when the opportunity comes to love and to serve them, we will. And that as you orchestrate, as you open up opportunities, that we would just extend a simple invitation to try out something that's going on here, that they might get a taste of what you're up to. It's all about you, God, and we want to be with you. And I pray that somehow, some way, in ways that your Spirit can only do and we cannot, I pray that you will help raise the banner of Crosswalk and what you're doing in this valley. That people who will resonate with us will, in some mysterious way, even miraculous perhaps, will somehow find us because you love them and you want something for them. You want more for them. So help them find us by your Spirit's power. And now, bind us together in love as a community, that we would learn to love each other very, very well. Because Jesus himself said, when we learn to do that, the world outside will know that we are truly your followers. So may we love each other well as community, even as we strive to love our community around us. We ask this in the name and purpose of Jesus. Amen.